My name's Arthur McAllister, but in the Proctor district everyone just called me Art. 63, retired, thick locksmith's fingers, old grease under my nails that won't budge even with a wire brush, and a callus on my right thumb from a lifetime of turning pin cylinders. On the Saturday, everything tipped. Tacoma's sky wore that silvery gray you learn to call normal. I came back from Metropolitan Market with a bag of Honeycrisp apples, coarse ground coffee, and rye bread. I climbed the cedar steps to my porch on North 24th Street and did the move my fingers could do with my eyes closed. Right hand in the pocket, key ring, that coppery one up front headed for the lock I'd installed myself back in '96. The key wouldn't go in. It wasn't sticky, wasn't jammed, it just wouldn't go. I saw it right away. That cylinder wasn't mine. Someone had changed the lock on my own house. A cheap quickset, polished brass screaming against the old Schlage knob. My stomach dropped the way it drops when you hear a new noise in the engine, and you know it's not a cricket. I tapped lightly. The wind flipped a paper up from under the doormat. Brianna's round handwriting, my daughter-in-law, popped off the page. Art, for your safety and peace of mind, we changed the locks. We talked to Evan. We're getting your move set up to somewhere more suitable. We'll explain later. B. For my safety. They'd changed the lock for my safety. 3 apples rolled across the porch boards and into the grass. I sat on the swing. It groaned like an old friend, and I let my weight remind me who I was there. Linda's husband for 38 years, father of 2, owner of a house that carried the smell of black tea right around 6 in the morning. Chalk marks down the side of the garage. The low whistle of that English kettle. There on my own porch, I felt the quiet shame of being refused by my door. I grabbed my phone. Evan picked up on the 3rd call, with the impatience of someone who's rehearsed his speech. Dad, I was just about to call you. You gonna tell me you changed my locks without telling me? It's for your own good. You fell twice this month. The house has stairs. Brianna talked to the manager at Birchwood Place. They've got a spot. The market's hot. It's the perfect time to sell. He started listing like a catalog. Evan, I didn't authorize anything. I live here. I'm the owner of this house. Silence from someone who doesn't like the mirror. When he spoke, his voice had gone cold. You don't live there anymore, Dad. It's what's best. You don't see it, but it is. The call ended the way it ends when 2 men see the world through different windows. I sat and listened to the first fat rain hit the awning. When the burn in my face cooled, the part of me that always puts out fires with detail took over. The professional. They'd only changed the front door lock. The side gate had a new little hardware store padlock, thin shackle, the kind you pick up on 6th Ave. The price tag still stuck on. The laundry room strike plate showed fresh Phillips marks. Whoever did it didn't know how to hide a trail. This is where you might expect me, the old locksmith, to pull a hairpin, pop everything in 10 seconds, and ghost my way in. But I learned one thing in 45 years opening other people's doors by request. Real power is knowing you can and choosing how. I could already see the headline, "Elderly man forces entry, chaos, police called." I wasn't going to be the boogeyman in the story, that's mine. I called the Pierce County Sheriff's non-emergency line. Explained slow. Homeowner, locked out, house on North 24th. While I waited, I called Nora Delgado, my attorney on Pacific Avenue. Nora listened without drama, like someone leafing through a safe manual. Art, do you have the deed and the trust papers? In the office safe. Inside the house? Good. When the deputies get there, you go in together, grab the folder, send me pictures. If they say power of attorney, ask to see it. Unless it's durable and specific, it doesn't cut it. Locking you out is an illegal lockout in Washington state, and record everything. The cruiser rolled up a little before 4 in the afternoon. 2 stepped out, a black woman whose eyes didn't miss an edge. Nameplate read, Deputy Collins, and a young guy with rookie energy, Ramirez. I showed my driver's license with that address on it. Collins rapped on the door with her knuckles. Brianna opened, the kind of person who seems to glow even in daylight. Ponytail perfect, beige blouse with not a thread out of place. Ms. Brianna, is this the homeowner? the deputy asked, nodding at me. He's my father-in-law, but he's confused. We have power of attorney. May I see it? She disappeared for a minute and came back with a folder. Limited medical POA signed at the hospital when I got a stitch taken out of my shoulder. Deputy Collins lifted an eyebrow, read 2 lines more than Brianna expected, and handed it back. This doesn't authorize changing the locks to kick out the homeowner. Mr. McAllister, would you like to go in? I just pointed at the cylinder. Collins smiled, one-sided. Want me to call a locksmith? I was the locksmith, I said. I pulled from my pocket the little practice pick set I'd carried for decades out of habit, not malice. 7 seconds. A clean click. Brianna's face went a shade paler. Sorry, I said without gloating. 45 years listening to those pins. It's almost music. If you've ever stood holding your key and heard your house say no, don't stop here. Stick around through chapter 5. That's where the whole town hears the click with me. I wasn't some old man clutching junk. I was a locksmith who'd spent a night on a storefront in downtown Tacoma at about 2:30 in the morning. One February back in '93, pulling a rust-frozen Medeco cylinder. I knew pins, drivers, cams, latches, and the neighborhood's voices in the dark. From '78 through 2019, I opened more doors than I can count. My right thumb carried a callus that held a map of the city. North End, South Tacoma Way, Hilltop, Ruston. I listened to locks the way I listened to Linda reading on the couch, closely enough to catch the word that came before the period. The house on North 24th wasn't just lumber. It was where Linda hung the felt angel that first Christmas, the amber-lit lamp we never replaced because the way it shadowed over the kettle felt like an embrace. It was the smell of wet cedar rising off the porch after a light rain. I could tell you my right leg ached a little more on the 3rd step, and that the kitchen floor creaks a touch after 9 when the heater kicks on. My whole life fit on a key ring. Linda passed 7 years earlier on a morning in April that woke up quiet. She taught literature at Lincoln High, and sometimes came home smelling of chalk with a line of Steinbeck on her lips. At the hospital, when the nurse turned the monitor away, Linda squeezed my hand and said what would keep speaking in me for the rest of my days. Art, you're good at putting the screw back where it belongs. Don't forget people need alignment too. I promised I wouldn't confuse control with care. When Evan and Brianna bought their house in Lakewood in 2023, I put in just about $74 grand toward the down payment. Didn't gift it. A loan. Proper. Recorded promissory note and a deed of trust in my favor with Pierce County. In a paragraph Nora insisted on adding, it said, "Illicit or abusive conduct against the lender triggers immediate default." Evan laughed. "Dad, it's just paper." I said, "Paper outweighs opinion when the water's rising." At my house, Linda and I set up the Whitman McAllister Family Trust. The clause I loved most was clear as a safe lock, a life estate for me. It meant whatever else shook out, the house was mine as long as I was breathing. It wasn't stubbornness. It was protection against other people's hurry. Did I fall twice in March? I did, on the living room rug, distracted by the old radio. 2 falls didn't turn me into furniture to be repositioned in a catalog. They were signs I needed a grab bar in the shower, a sensor on the step, a non-slip mat. Alignment, not a coup. Maybe I messed up being generous without paperwork in other corners. During their basement remodel, I left Evan and Brianna's names on my power and gas temporarily. I set an auto debit for about $312 a month to cover the shortfall on their mortgage that would even out soon. Next thing I knew, I had 24 identical statements. Life is a machine that keeps repeating whatever you don't stop to fix. That afternoon, Deputy Collins went in with me and Deputy Ramirez made space with his body. The boxes in the living room said donate and sell in brown tape. Letters rushed. Linda's china cabinet was empty. The space looked like a pulled tooth. In the kitchen, the candle burning was called Ocean Breeze. The house smelled like a hotel, and nothing humiliates me more than memory turned into logistics. "Where's Linda's china?" I asked, but my voice came out half-size. "Dad, don't be dramatic," Evan said, appearing without meeting my eyes. "We're just speeding things up. Birchwood has PT, meals, people keeping an eye on you. You fell twice, this is love. Love. That was love wrapped in bubble wrap and sold by the foot. We stepped into the office. I opened the drawer, pulled the blue trust folder and the deed to the house. I pointed to the life estate clause for Deputy Collins. She nodded, jotted the number on her clipboard. Little did I know that gesture, my finger on that line, would turn into a hammer in Chapter 4. When the cruiser pulled away, the silence got heavy. Brianna tightened her hair tie. Evan raised his voice, and I did what I do when noise tries to take me over. I headed for the garage. My bench was there. Yellow DeWalt, drill index, a stash of Medico cylinders saved for the day the city asked for real care. I set a restricted keyway cylinder on the front door, another on the laundry room. Key profile M312, not something you copy at the corner kiosk. I reinforced the strike plate with long 3-inch screws. On the side door, I taped up a firm notice. Entry only with the owner's authorization. Any violation will be reported to the Pierce County Sheriff. The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. From just before 6 to a little past 7, a dozen calls from Brianna, half as many from Evan. I didn't answer. A few minutes later came a text. You're going to regret making this public. We were only trying to care. You knew that care came wrapped in the same tape I'd seen on the boxes marked sell. Sunday, I closed the loops I'd left open for convenience. I took their names off my utility accounts, changed the thermostat passwords, canceled the auto debit for about $3.12 a month, opened my banking app and saw, in 24 lines, the pattern of my mistake. I called Nora. Accelerate the note, I said. You sure, Art? I am. I'm not putting anybody on the street. But I want the weight of the paper they called just paper to land where it should. Monday morning, just after 9, Nora filed the notice of default at the Pierce County Recorder's office. Paper stamped with one of those long instrument numbers. I saw my signature next to $74,000. Simple interest a little over 4%. Payments set at about $850 a month for 2 years. At the bottom, the clause Brianna didn't want to read. Illicit or abusive conduct against the lender constitutes immediate default. Locking the lender out of his own house slid under that line like it was written for it. The micro-humiliations blew through the neighborhood like an October wind. In the Tacoma Mamas and Dads group, someone posted, "Confused elder kept in an old house, family trying to help, and he calls the cops." On Proctor's next door, a lady with a cat avatar wrote, "Sad when pride gets in the way." I watched my name turn into hallway fable. I breathed, took photos of the boxes labeled Donate, the Ocean Breeze candle, the shiny new Kwikset shouting at the old knob, sent everything to Nora. She shot back a cease and desist with my digital signature and a note. Hand deliver via courier, no scene. A little after 3, a kid in a blue hoodie knocked at Evan's place in Lakewood with the envelope. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged. Delivery confirmed. In the middle of all this, you want to start yelling at the world. I swallowed the yell and put the kettle on. The thin whistle of the English one did what it always does. Pulled me back inside. I took a sip, let it singe my tongue a little. Then I went back to aligning what they'd knocked out of alignment. Wednesday, I went to Pierce County Superior. Courtroom 3B. Judge Jenkins, short, eyes like an airport scanner. Brianna came in with a beige folder, not a hair out of place. Evan had 2 days of stubble and the posture of someone who hasn't slept. Deputy Ramirez slipped in at the back, recognized me with a small nod. The judge listened. Brianna leaned hard on care, said stairs a few times, love more than once. Nora said life estate, illegal lockout, and deed of trust. She showed the deed, the trust, the incident report. When the judge asked why they'd changed the locks, Evan tripped over his own words. Temporary restraining order granted, the judge said, stamping. No one changes locks, removes property, or attempts to sell without Mr. McAllister's authorization. I recommend mediation. As I signed the slip, an email popped up. Tacoma Weekly. Family dispute. Son tries to protect father. Police called. The piece had that tone that loves to drizzle feelings without reading documents. For a minute, an old anger flared. I wasn't going to clap back in the hallway. I was going to turn on the light. I didn't know that light would burn brighter than some folks could stand. I went home and opened the blue folder, took out the deed, the trust, the promissory note, touched the life estate clause with my finger. In Linda's voice behind the kettle's hum, I heard, "Line it up, Art. Line it up." I wasn't going to bust anything, bodies or relationships. I'd line it up with paper, with deadlines, with things that hold. I sat in the leather chair that smells like grease and memory and wrote on a clean white sheet a letter that didn't ask permission from anger or from tears. It was a notice, sure, but more than that, a boundary. I wasn't going to chase, I was going to fence what needed fencing. Evan and Brianna, you locked me out of my house. You called it care. What I heard was, you don't matter. I matter. This house matters. The paper you called just paper matters. Conditions to suspend acceleration of the note and close this out. A formal written apology to me and to Maggie. 3 months of family therapy with Dr. Naomi Feldman, Tuesdays at 5, on 6th Ave. A no trespass agreement. No one sets foot on my property without my written say-so. Payment plan. About $850 a month for 2 years. On time, no suspense. Trust revision. Remove any expectation of inheriting this house. When I'm gone, it goes to the Linda McAllister Scholarship at Lincoln High. Signed by the 26th by midnight, and I'll suspend acceleration. If not, I proceed. Love has a deadbolt too. Art. I picked a number that would sting but still fit. About $850. Not a penny crooked. And a deadline that wasn't decoration. The 26th, by midnight. The world loves to think old folks don't set deadlines. Nora read it, fixed one word with her red pen and said, "Perfect." In the footer, she tugged the cord we needed. If there's another attempt to enter without authorization, we'll seek a permanent restraining order under Washington's elder abuse law. The law is sometimes a hammer, sometimes a square. That day, it was both. Next morning, Tacoma Weekly called. "Mr. McAllister, can we hear your side?" I said, "You can see my documents." I emailed the deed, the trust, the notice of default, the TRO. By late afternoon, the site had an update. Owner produced documents. Illegal lockout confirmed. Family agrees to mediation. No one reads a correction with the hunger they bring to gossip, but the people who need to, do. On Tuesday, the realtor whose glossy booklet had been sitting on my table sent a way too long apology email. I answered with 2 lines. "Do not use my house in your prospecting materials, not without permission. The man who owns the locks." One of those replies that click into place. Sometimes the turning point doesn't have trumpets, it has quiet and a click. Mine came toward evening, when the door settled, and I opened it with my new Medico. The click sounded like a word that finally fit in my mouth again. Proctor has its little stages, the Saturday market, the sidewalk in front of the Blue Mouse Theater, the next door crowd. I went to the square, the digital one and the brick one. On Proctor's next door, I posted under my own name and face, a wrench practically tattooed into my hand from use. "I'm Art McAllister, the homeowner on North 24th. I was locked out by my son and daughter-in-law. Was there a power of attorney? There was, medical limited, useless for this. Is there a trust with a life estate? There is. Is there a promissory note with a deed of trust? There is. Police came. A judge granted a restraining order, and I swapped the lock for a restricted keyway. I'm available to explain to any neighbor how to protect your own future without becoming a hostage." I attached photos with the sensitive bits covered by a ruler. No airing laundry in the square, just laying documents out in the sun. The comments landed different this time. Louis, who owns the grocery, wrote, "Art, my mom always said, anyone who cares by taking the key out of your hand isn't caring, they're controlling. Good luck." Dorothy, Queen of Hydrangeas, said, "Thanks for speaking up. The neighbor's Airbnb in the basement was already annoying. Locking a man out of his own house? Different story." I gave a small smile. Relief can be a number too. 124 likes, 0 gossip. In the brick square, the Tacoma Weekly ran a photo of my hand holding the blue-headed key. The headline was dramatic. Papers can't help themselves. The man who owns the locks responds. The copy, plain and dry, carried the initials I wanted. TRO, the Elder Abuse Statute, Deed of Trust. The reporter ended with a line worth a frame. Sometimes what looks like harshness is just the outline of respect. Brianna, always photo-ready, texted me a little after 10 that night. "This is public humiliation. You exposed us." I breathed and sent what I'd promised myself. No snark, no smallness. I didn't expose anyone. I flipped on the light. Hallways echo. Rooms have windows. Next day, mid-afternoon, the thing I was expecting arrived, folded in thirds on cheap paper, my name misspelled on the envelope. Arth. Evan's letter. "Dad, I was wrong. When I changed your lock, what I was locking was my fear. I shrank you so I could fit into a version of the world where I didn't look like a failing son. I'm sorry. Thank you for putting deadbolts where I tried shortcuts. Evan." I read it sitting on the porch. The boards still smelled like rain. Toward 5, we walked into Dr. Naomi Feldman's office on 6th Ave. Gray chairs, a landscape painting that didn't steal focus. She asked us to talk without a script. I said what hurt wasn't the lock. It was the sentence hidden in it. "You don't matter." Evan cried the way adults cry when they know tears don't fix anything, but they clean. "I'm underwater with bills, Dad. The mortgage a little over $2,000 a month. Daycare just under 1,000. The car note just under 500. I shelved you like a problem and told myself I'd deal with it later." Brianna hard-edged, took longer, then cracked where I didn't expect. I grew up without a dad. I controlled everything so I wouldn't feel the lack. I pushed you out so I didn't have to see I was scared. I'm sorry. While therapy stitched, the clock on the notice of default kept ticking. County auditors don't pause deadlines for tears. On the 26th late afternoon, Nora called. They signed Art. Letter, therapy, no trespass, about $850 a month. Trust revised for Linda's scholarship. They're at the bank setting up the auto debit. A few minutes later, my email chimed with the first receipt. About $850, one of those little confirmation codes. It landed in my account the way a tired grandkid drops onto the couch after playing, asking for nothing, just fitting. Sometimes the perfect revenge you fantasize after the slap gets replaced by something better. Justice with an educated audience. I wasn't after applause. I wanted the quiet of a house that shows respect. Sunday, I made corn and bacon soup. Invited Maggie, my daughter, steady as a harbor, and Evan and Brianna with one note. No speeches, no decisions. They brought an apple cake from Karina Bakery and yellow flowers picked in a hurry. Evan handed me a leather keychain, RT stamped small. Inside, a copy of my Medico, the one with the blue head. With your authorization, he said, like he'd discovered the most grown-up phrase in the world. I tapped my knuckles in the air as if knocking on a door. The room laughed. I heard the prettiest sound a house knows how to make. Laughter and a spoon touching a bowl. I didn't know there was still a good turn waiting at the end, not in the paper. In the hallway of the school where Linda taught people how to listen to words. Not every wound closes pretty, but with the right outline it heals clean. In November, I put grab bars in the bathroom, motion sensors on the stairs, a non-slip mat down. Not because I'd surrendered to that story that turns age into childhood, but because I respect good hardware. A tight screw prevents an accident. The house got a doorbell camera. I didn't need an audience at the gate to say what needed saying. Early December, Nora and I went to Lincoln High. We signed the papers for the Linda McAllister Scholarship. $25,000 to start, then about $2,000 a month for 2 years. Funny how numbers find their place. The mortgage they'd been paying turned into an investment in literature. The secretary, small hands, thanked us with a smile that felt like the first line of a poem. I stepped outside and breathed in cold air that did my chest good. Linda always wanted the word book to keep finding people. At Christmas, the house smelled like pine and cinnamon. I set the tree in its usual corner. The felt angel Linda sewed on top. Evan and Maggie parked the kids at the doorway and said, "Wait for Grandpa to open up." I turned the key, a neat click, the kind you recognize in the dark. The boys barreled in. Maggie's dog skidded on the non-slip mat and decided it had invented a joke. I laughed. Not the laugh of someone who won a duel, the laugh of someone who kept his name on the doorframe. On New Year's Eve, I sat on the porch with a mug of tea, and Evan's letter folded in my shirt pocket. He showed up with Brianna and 2 bottles of non-alcoholic cider. They'd both quit drinking in the middle of the storm. "Dad," he said, "thanks for not saving me the easy way. Thanks for putting a lock on it." Brianna took a breath and met my eyes the way she usually avoided. "I'm sorry, Art. I grabbed for control because I was scared. I disrespected you." I listened. And I answered the way I promised myself I would. No small, no grand. "Apology accepted, boundaries too. This door doesn't open to a shove anymore, deal?" She nodded. We toasted. Tea, cider, water. "To freedom," Maggie said, straight as a line. "To the right locks," I added. Tacoma's wind carried that scent of rain getting ready, January's gray light already rehearsing. I looked at the step that sent me down in March and set my foot on it, firm, aligned. The money started arriving. About $850 the first month, about $850 the second, about $850 the third. Sometimes just before midnight, but it came. With each ping from the bank, I didn't see a figure. I heard the sentence I needed from the kid I raised. I'll own it. Therapy went on past 3 months. In the 8th session, I heard a line that made me smile the way a locksmith smiles when a pin sets. "Dad, when I tried to push you out of your house, it was me who didn't fit in mine." Evan learned a big sentence. I read the Tacoma Weekly without looking for myself. The correction headline sits in an envelope with the deed, the TRO, and the notice of default. Not as a trophy, as a map. If someone ever needs to know the path, it's there. Paper isn't the villain. Paper is the track. It's what said Art lives here for the rest of his life, and the rest becomes a scholarship for the kid who needs a Linda to show up. On the anniversary of the day I found a shiny Kwikset where my Schlager used to live. I bought an ocean breeze candle, on purpose. I lit it for 3 minutes, let the house smell like a hotel, then snuffed it out. Opened the oil tin I've always used on hinges, wiped the pins, listened to the metal say thanks. The smell went back to being my life. If someone at the cafe on 26th asks what happened that day with the locks, I answer with the kind of simplicity that clicks. They locked me out. I smiled and called the sheriff. Then I lined up the rest with paper, a deadline, and a blue-headed key. I'm not the man who breaks in. I'm the man who remembers where each screw goes, who holds the door when the wind kicks up, who doesn't confuse care with control. And yes, I was, and I still am, the man who owns the locks. Because justice in a kitchen doesn't come with a siren. It comes with a kettle. It doesn't shout. It says, "Come in." And on New Year's, I finally understood the missing line. Freedom isn't a door flung open without a lock. It's choosing the right lock, in the right place with the right people, and toasting with the ones who learned how to knock. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about the story in the comments. See you in the next one.